Yeah. Never give up.
Yeah,
All
man.
right. That is
No, but
it.
so
That is proper.
where's the response, man?
You're holding back on me. That is
Yeah, where's the response on the tune, boy?
Amazing. Amazing response on the song. People who don't normally call me. So that is
the first thing there. Yeah.
People who don't normally call.
Yeah.
People who don't normally call. And plus, Bass was in the video too. Bass had a big time in the video.
They're down to the end, but I'm inside.
So men don't saying, but hey, you put Bass in the video and then put me, you know.
Men saying that, man, that small thing, boy. It was only there for like 5 seconds, so God, no, man.
Boy, 5 seconds is plenty for men, you know. All right, so people, we are on the live today. We have David Mohammed.
Brother David
Mohammed holds right. David Mohammed holds a psychology PhD and a double major bachelor degree from the University of the West Indies in psychology and education. He's the author of Black Studies and holds a teacher's diploma from the University of TNT and is part-time lecturer at UB Roytech and at the Cipriani Labour College.
But you forgot one of the most important things. He went to Trinity College. He went to Trinity College.
Oh, go all right now. Okay.
You know what I mean?
All right now, Trinity boy.
Yeah, but
you know, he's a person that, you know, you look when you look at him and you watch his videos, he would have you watching it. You know, sometimes you see a video and he might just pass it, but he always talk something of sense.
Yeah, black conscious.
You know, he always educated always knowledge.
Right? No, I want to say something before we even get into talking with him. A lot of the times when you know, Afro-Trinbagonians or people of African descent get together to speak on, you know, on us and certain things, people just find it racist. You know what I mean? There's going to be nothing racist about this conversation. We just having our conversation. You know what I mean? So
Cooling noise in the back.
Yeah, and today's your boy birthday too, boy. Happy birthday to your son, man.
Yeah, today's my son birthday. I wanna say happy birthday to Majik today. Actually, you realize my backdrop a little different. I'm not where I normally be.
Party going
on a different location
tonight. Because the night today is here.
Not party. Not party.
Okay.
But it's in a different location tonight. You know what I mean?
Nice one, yeah.
So it's a good vibe tonight. So let's bring the man himself on the live. You know, Black Agenda Project. Welcome him on the live. A great man indeed.
Yes, man. All right, sir.
Good evening. Greetings. Pleasure to be on.
Yes.
Nice. Good evening to you.
Yeah, man. You notice I'm a military wear tonight, so it's a revolution tonight.
Right.
You understand? Revolution will not be televised.
Well, today's my son's birthday. I'm just relaxing home, so I'm feeling little, you know, we can't party, we can't go away, so we home.
Happy birthday to your son. How old is he?
He's actually 2 today. He turned 2 today. You know, he turned 2, and what's very interesting about it is that I have 3 kids, you know, and him, I actually was there to see the birth. You know what I mean? So hearing about it and actually experiencing it as a man is a whole different feeling. You have a different sense of appreciation for women. You know, it was one of those days where you get a different connection. Something that's hit me in a different light after experiencing something like that. I didn't want to do it first, because we went to the classes and I was mixing. I was like, oh God, you know, watching all these YouTube videos, watching all these movies and seeing women in labor and saying, hey, we don't want to be there. But after seeing that, it brought us certain joy. And today it's still with me, and it's something I could talk about and I could encourage brothers like myself to actually experience.
No, as you said that, a question popped into mind as we gonna be talking, you know, about black consciousness and ourselves and men and everything. Do you think if a lot more men, David, saw the birth of their children, like especially a lot of black men, because sometimes we have a problem where we don't have a lot of, you know, fathers in the home, and there's always this problem. Do you think if a lot of or brothers saw the birth of their children, it would have a difference on them? A difference of how they think, not only about themselves, but about their children, the future.
Well, I could only imagine, seeing that it's not an experience I've had myself. I could only imagine what it could be like. I mean, I've thought about it on many occasions. So, it's almost impossible for me to tell, but I believe it would definitely have some kind of effect on one's perception of the whole experience of fatherhood. But, it's difficult for me to say, but maybe.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, RKG, this is your first time meeting the brother? First time talking to him?
Yeah, well, it's no funny enough, I don't know if he knows me, but I see this guy. I work TTT. I work next 99.1. So often I'll see him passing by, but I've never really gotten the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation. It's like, good day, good afternoon,
right.
But I listen to his show. I watch his videos. You can, and I was telling Base earlier, it's every time you say something, you give us knowledge. You give us knowledge. They say one of the richest places in the world is a cemetery, right? Because a lot of people die with their knowledge. But you, for some reason, every time you watch a video, you feel some sense of, what's the word I'm looking for here, boy? I'm looking for a word. Help me. Like, it's almost like a fulfillment. That's the word I want to get. Some sense of fulfillment.
But most sense of self. Sense of self, I think, is the most important. Sense of self. But Brother David, how I mean, starting because I was just telling me you are a Trinity boy, most important. But what really brought you into this realm of being want to be not only black conscious, I know you will join the Muslim the Muslims and that kind of stuff, Muslim faith, but what really brought you to this point? What was it a turning point in your life I don't know if as a young man, I mean, and you're from school, you were in a higher form than me. I never saw you like one of the slack boys. You always just a decent guy. Did you always grow up like that, wanting to be this? Was there a turning point that said, listen, you see this is the road that I'm going down? What made you want to go to this?
Well, I mean, coming out to Trinity College, there were so many things you'd have observed on that junior level. And also after the 1990 coup, I was just 19 years old, but I wrote an article which the Heat newspaper published. I actually had a conversation with someone and they said, you should write that down. And I did, and it was an article in the Heat newspaper back then. I was really surprised. And starting to study sociology as well. And also listening to certain hip-hop artists in particular.
About Public Enemy?
Yeah, but more KRS-One.
Okay, KRS-One.
Yeah, later on Public Enemy. But KRS-One was so direct with it. And of course, later on Ice Cube. But the real turning point, I think the real turning point for me would have been reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. Chapters 12, 13, and 14, when he was talking about Elijah Muhammad. So after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, I became more interested in who Elijah Muhammad was than really who Malcolm X was. And that would have been it. I would have joined the Nation of Islam then and there, and planned to come back to Trinidad because I was in England. And I was opened up to a whole world there in my early 20s, in the 1990s. And just so incidentally, within a year, I was actually in the presence of many of those people who I'd idolized, many of the hip hop artists I'd idolized as a young person, because all of them had seemed to gravitate towards Minister Farrakhan. I mean, I became familiar with Ice Cube as a member of NWA. And then imagine I joined the Nation of Islam, and then I get his first solo album, and on the inside of his sleeve, he is saying the best place for a black man or a black woman to be is in the Nation of Islam. And I'm thinking,
so right there, you see all the influence of music. The influence of music is important.
I had already joined. I had just joined myself. Again, I had known him as NWA.
Yeah,
I was like, well, of course, first time I ever heard the name Farrakhan would have been on Public Enemy records. But then so many people after that, from Notorious B.I.G. to Wu-Tang Clan, Big Daddy Kane, Public Enemy, ghetto boys. But they were talking about Farrakhan a lot. And then so that was my springboard, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically you were inspired in that era, you know?
Yeah, that was a positive time for us, I think, late 1980s, early 1990s. Because I was a musician as well. I was a musician in school.
Okay.
Going back to I used to play
what instrument in
guitar,
particular?
Guitar.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right,
In fact, I used to play with Nigel Rojas.
All right.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, well, I never played in Orange Sky. I'm talking about just jam with Nigel.
Right, yeah.
We even had the idea of a band together called Face Value. Anytime you see him, just ask him about Face Value. Right.
All right. No, with that said, why didn't you continue down that road of the musician path? What stopped you?
Well, I did, because I mean, right now I have about 9 electric guitars, 3 acoustic guitars.
So you still play?
Yeah, I still play, and most of my radio theme music is my own music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Coming into the Nation of Islam, and I left a good few guitars in England as well. One in particular.
So that's that's you?
Of course, it's me, yeah.
Well, all right, nice man.
So
when we want some guitars on our track,
absolutely,
call you up.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we saw the influence there. Well, music. I mean, I always heard Morgan Job talk about music, right?
Yeah.
Always heard the late Morgan Job,
yeah,
speak about music. He used to play his guitar, and he would say, the kind of music that we have our children listening to.
Yeah.
How important do you think is that in the upbringing?
No, it's extremely important, but once you're battling against culture, that's a tremendous challenge. And I have noticed, I mean, you take the most negative hip-hop, most negative of probably any music, with the most violence, talking about drive-by shootings or even, rape or whatever. And they're conscious songs on those albums. All of them. I mean, from Tupac to, again, NWA, even Two Live Crew, right? And Bone Thugs and Harmony, Ghetto Boys, all of them. There's so much positive music that they wrote, but the ones that they sensationalize is the negativity. Is not that different, I think, even within our own local music industry. And
but the question is, not to cut you, but the question is why people
gravitate towards negative. People just seem to gravitate towards negativity.
Well, there could be another side of that argument. Is it so much what they gravitate to, or is it so much a case of what they're fed? I mean, people acquire a taste for whatever they're exposed to or whatever their senses absorb, and they become accustomed to it, and then when they're deprived of it, they develop a craving for it. And I think that has been the situation with our music and negativity. I am also of the view that there's a much deeper science behind the kind of entertainment products that go out there, not just with music, but also with television. There are always subliminal, subconscious messages that creep into the back of the mind that have a dominant effect on the ideas that emerge out to the front of the mind. And those who have invested billions of dollars in the industry obviously would also make investments into the best way to subconsciously capture an audience. And I think there's a lot of that.
So basically what you said is it's deliberately done?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a science. Look at the politics, for example. The amount of millions of dollars that are invested in psychologists to examine trends and interests and what kinds of characteristics and attributes people gravitate towards. And then they will try to transform a politician or mold, shape, fashion, and redesign his image to be more likable or compatible with a specific population. So they don't just send someone as they are up in an electorate, but they tailor make and redesign who that person is. So it's almost like a social experiment. And, you know, in any kind of mass publication or mass media or entertainment, film or movies, you know, that will always be a major factor.
Now, you know, recently, brother, there was this whole thing about not having enough, what I would say, not having enough diversity within the movies and that kind of thing. I mean, I think we've seen it now on television. We think about shows like, even it may be some kind of quote unquote a little bit, I don't want to use the word embarrassing or token towards it, like blackish, you know, and these kind of shows. But at least you're seeing black people there. You know, sometimes we accept, well, you know, it like this, but at least, you know, we getting it like this. You know, what do you think about it?
I think the problem with that was more the nominations for Academy Awards. But in terms of the amount of content, a lot of those diversity problems may have been solved up to a point. I mean, I haven't actually seen Blackish as yet, but interestingly, I've been on a kind of nostalgia path recently because I bought an Atari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what an Atari is, RKG? You know what an Atari is?
Oh, yeah, but all right. I was my era was Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and in PlayStation 1. That the Atari.
Yeah, that's a bit before
it was in my era. But I understand what you're. But I know up on Atari.
That's good because they just bought it back out. But because obviously you're not going to get that kind of technology, but they bought out a new version of it, and that's like 105 games and so. But anyway, so that, and I also recently looked at Battlestar Galactica, right? And what would have led me back to look at that was The Mandalorian. You familiar with The Mandalorian, the new Star Wars series? Right.
No, I'm not Star Wars.
I was never, to be quite honest with you, I was never a Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars a little bit too long for me.
Like, you know, one of those movies. No, like you know, one of those movies you would see by anyway, but they never get to actually finish watch even one.
Right.
It was one of those.
Well,
movies.
Disney have taken over Star Wars, and they just bought out their first series, which is called The Mandalorian, based on one of the Star Wars characters, and it's really up there. You know, it's really up there. So I decided to go back and look at Battlestar Galactica on Amazon Prime, which is in 1978, which is one year after the first Star Wars movie came out. And, you know, looking at Battlestar Galactica, I thought to myself that at that time, late 1970s, that was probably the most racially diverse television program or movie that there was, because you had so many black characters in leading roles, which was kind of uncommon for the 1970s. So, yeah, I think that would have been largely solved. I mean, if you look at all the superhero movies, take, for example, Captain America, right? You'd have probably seen the last Avengers movie. Where, right, so at the end of the movie, Captain America handed over his mantle to a black man, Anthony Mackie.
Right,
and, and so, you know, that would have raised a lot of curiosity in a lot of the viewers. But exactly.
What's next?
So they have a series again on Disney it's called Falcon and the Winter Soldier, centered around that character, the black man, after he's given the Captain America shield. Not wanting to give away spoilers, but I was pleased with it because they didn't just pretend that it wasn't an issue and say, okay, a black man is Captain America now, you know, and he goes out. No, the first half of the season was dealing with the issues of America accepting a black man as Captain America. And he refused it at first because he was black, you know, and then to make it worse, he found out about other great black soldiers who were legends who were ignored. And, you know, so he wrestled with his issues, but he ended up accepting it. So yeah, those kinds of issues are being dealt with head on right now. But just last one I'll mention, I mean, Star Wars is probably the biggest franchise of any movies that came out in the last 30 or 40 years. But when the biggest Star Wars movie came out in 2005, George Lucas's next film after that was a movie called Red Tails, which was about the black men who fought in World War II for America, and how they were segregated. They were racially segregated into a squadron, but they were the most successful piloting squad. And what was unfortunate is that for a film as big as Star Wars to come out, and then the maker of that film bring out another film dedicated to the black men who fought in World War II, and did not even make Movie Town in Trinidad, that was horrific. So I think there's less of an appreciation in our society, maybe, by the stakeholders of having that kind of content running. But in terms of the role equality and diversity in roles, I think, we've probably gotten to that stage.
All right. On the topic of movies, right? We know Black Panther was a major success, and even with the Black Panther movie, I don't know if I'm wrong, correct me. I realized people became a little more black conscious, so to speak, after the movie. Why you think that?
Well, again, remember, we grew up in an era where we were denied the right to have black heroes in film and television. And not only that, but many times that we appeared in movies, we were degraded, insulted, disrespected. I mean, you had like Tarzan, a white man in Africa is the king of the jungle, and he could control and command all the beasts, and where were we? They had the metaphor of Planet of the Apes as this nightmare vision that our former enslavers had of what would happen to them if we ever took revenge for slavery and took over. And then even, the television programs like Good Times and the Jeffersons that show us in absolute poverty, and then even Different Strokes, where there's this common concept of a white savior coming in to rescue black children out of poverty. So that's what we were bombarded with. And in the 1970s, there was a genre of film called the Blaxploitation films, with people like the original Shaft, Isaac Hayes, who I met and had quite a conversation with, Superfly and Foxy Brown and so on, where, to have us as pimps, drug dealers, prisoners, gang members, criminals,
everything negative. Everything. It seems just like everything negative has been associated with the word black.
Of course.
Why is that? Is that
black? That's I want to stick a pin in it here. As we on the topic of movies, some of the comments I'm getting here. Orlando Octave is on the live and he says, the series Them. You can check it out. I've never seen that yet.
Yeah, that's really good. It's a that is a new genre of program that has come out. Horror movies with black people, starting with Get Out.
Get Out, yes.
But I think Get Out was like pure fiction. It was entertaining, but it was pure fiction. But Them it's not fiction at all. It's eerie. Yeah,
seriously,
but it's real, and it's a horror movie about some of what black people went through in like all white neighborhoods. So it's very very, very educated. I want to salute Orlando Octave for his recent track about issues coming out of Black Lives Matter and into this era here. Very, very strong.
Very strong.
Let's bring it back home a little bit, David, in terms of, we always say in Trinidad and Tobago, every creed and race find an equal place, but is there racism in Trinidad and Tobago? Do we, is there, a diversion in Trinidad and Tobago?
But of course there's racism in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's not...
Some people don't believe that, some people believe we all won, everybody happy, and anybody who says that, we're living.
Well,
because for Carnival, we all jump up together. Right. When it has sports, we all love up together, Right. So where is the racism really?
Yeah, that's so ironic though, because as Bay said, Carnival, it's like all of you are one for Carnival. when we at the stadium
CPL
watching
and TPL,
game,
kind of thing, cricket, yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But away from that is segregation.
Right.
You
Okay,
know what
so
I mean?
basically, very quickly, there are 7 different levels of racism. It starts off with bigotry, which is name calling. You insult someone or make a reference to their skin color. You dislike them because of their appearance. But then it goes to intolerance, where you refuse to be in the presence of someone of another race. Then the third one is xenophobia, which is actually fear of. And of course, if you're afraid of people of another race, that will cause you to take actions to create a kind of distance, social distance from them. Then fourth is ethnocentrism, which is an ideological belief in the superiority of one's own race over others, which would lead to varying human rights and civil rights being afforded to persons by ethnicity. Fifth is prejudice, which is your basic prejudgment. You jump to conclusions and make assumptions about the people, and you judge in advance of having any conclusive facts. But number 6 is a dual one. It's segregation and stratification. The classic example is apartheid South Africa, where you have one community or one race that lives in a separate, segregated residential space and is subject to a completely different experience and relationship with the law. So their education is constantly...
Is it a divide and rule?
It most absolutely is. But the highest form of racism, which is number 7, is the one that is probably most evident in Trinidad and Tobago, which is institutionalized racism. Institutionalized racism, which is a phrase that was coined by Kwame Ture, by the way. Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, born in Trinidad and Tobago, the man who popularized the phrase Black Power to the whole world. Institutionalized racism is when practices of racial discrimination are incorporated into the culture of that firm, company, corporation, or institution. So even when there are no individuals who are racist themselves as persons are there, the system within itself recycles and regenerates a white privilege. So for example, Professor Selwyn Ryan did some research on the banks, right? The financial institutions of Trinidad and Tobago. And they pointed out that African people make up approximately 27% of those who go to the bank to try to get a loan. Indian people with 23% and whites with 36%, local whites. Now, African people are 50% of the population, but even though we're 50% of the population, only 66% of us actually got loans from the banks. The Indians, who were just about 40% of the population, they made 80% of them approximately got loans from the banks. But the whites, who are really less than 1% of the population, made up 100% of those who got loans from the banks. Literally any and every white person or Syrian, Chinese, French, Creole, etc., that went to the bank to get a loan, every single one of them got a loan, 100%. And the thing is as well, is that many of the Africans, according to Professor Selwyn Ryan, they went for small money. A little $10,000 here, a little $30,000 here to buy an old second-hand car or to repair a house. And they're still being told no. But the local whites going for millions, millions upon millions, and every single one of them they've simply never been refused. And then when you continue looking at that now, you have to ask yourself the question. So the poor Black person from Belmont or Laventille or Mova, Barataria, Beetham, Sealots, when they have a business idea, try to get a loan and are refused, what is the next step? The next step, of course, is to go and look for a job from someone else who got a loan. And that many times, that same person who got a loan, who didn't have an idea as great as theirs, ended up setting up a business right in their own community. And when you look at Laventille over the years, you've had many non-African people who had very successful financial operations in the midst of Laventille and employed Laventille residents with minimum wage. So you have Angostura, you have Fernandez, you have CGA, Coconut Growers Association, you have Trinidad Juices, you have Grel Torrell, Caraya's Winemakers, and so many others, right? But it recycles now. So that is racism, but it's institutionalized. It has become part of the system. And you also have that, for example, one last example I'll give is with crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. So according to the research of Dr. Darius Figuera, who's this region's leading criminologist, Dr. Darius Figuera said there are no African drug lords on the top level, not even one. No, he said all the drug lords in Trinidad and Tobago society, and he's of Portuguese descent, and he's not of African descent. He said the major drug lords in this country are whites, Syrians, Chinese, East Indians. But when you go into the prison, as I go into the prison, it's almost 100% or at least 95% Africans in there on drug offenses.
95% black and 5% white in jail.
But
True story.
Well, there you go. And again, all of that is institutionalized. So simply because you go to the beach, you see people of all races, you go to a party, you see people of all races, you go on Carnival Day, you see people of all races, that does not change, nor should it disguise the reality of the institutionalized racism in the banks, the institutionalized racism in the prisons, the inequality of opportunity when it comes to getting multi-million-dollar contracts from the government, and also the political neglect and abandonment of communities such as East Port of Spain, Laventille, Beetham, Mova, and Sealots. All of that remains the same. So we cannot afford to be victims of a smoke screen to make us believe that the problem is gone when it's stronger than it ever was before.
Have you yourself ever been in a situation where you've been racially discriminated in some way?
Well, I think all of us have, by the fact that we exist in these societies. Definitely. I mean, these days, I mean, to have that face-to-face experience is not as likely. I mean, I've been stopped and searched as a teenager, that kind of thing. Remember, I was born in England, and I wasn't born in London. I was born in Somerset. And, you know, growing up as a child there, you'd have experienced different things, yes. But whether we experience these things or not, it should not make any difference whatsoever to our participating in the objectives to end racial discrimination or any form of injustice or oppression or exploitation or tyranny within our nation. Because as Dr. Martin Luther King says, an injustice to anyone, anywhere, becomes an injustice to everyone, everywhere. And I cannot be a silent observer simply because it did not happen to me when my number might be the next one to call. See?
Yeah, man.
But do you?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think you said "end"? You use the word "end." Do you think there's an end to it?
Eventually, absolutely. I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable that all systems of injustice and oppression will eventually be dismantled. That's destiny. And if we believe in any version of God who created a universe that is based on justice because it's based on balance, that's all the universe is. Everything in the universe has its equal or opposite adversary or other half. To night, there's day. To darkness, there's light. To strength, there's weakness. Even in the smallest independently existing particle of matter, an atom, you have an electron and a neutron, a positive charge and a negative charge. So balance is always restored. This is a struggle for balance. It's a struggle for justice. What we're experiencing now is a tipping of the scale. But I mean, that is inevitable. That's written. That's destiny. So of course, you know, absolutely, it will end.
Somebody's asking you, how can I purchase one of your books? So we'll be talking about the books and all this stuff and thing later. Now, to me, Brother David, you know, we've had this one-on-one before, in terms of people, African people, black people, Trinbagonians. To me, I'd see us like kind of like soca music, like that genre. And there seems to be no unity. The other races, I mean, you look at them, they have that unity, Brother David. The Indian people, I mean, to me, if the bamboo, if the bamboo was, or it had Indian people in Lavantil and East Port of Spain, it would be. Don't you think it would be totally different? Like how they take the same bamboo and they turn it around, and there's business and it, you know, that kind of thing. What is it about us that we don't like to support us? That we don't like to see us climb? Yeah, I mean, sometimes people might say because of slavery and we on the slave ship and it was climbing up and we bringing each other down like crabs in a barrel. And as we talk about crabs, we go talk about that crate challenge later on. But what is it about us that we just don't seem to support each other, to lift up each other, to seem to get it together as a people?
No, on the tail end of base, I hear, I've heard this over and over where they say conditioning. I don't know if you're going to go there, but.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was planning to answer that differently because we always ask, what is it about us? And there are a million and one responses to that. But let's shine the spotlight off us for a moment. So we're talking about, okay, so yeah, the fight down in the business, in the industry and so on. But there is something that other people see in us that resembles very closely a meal ticket or a winning lottery number. They look at a black man's talent, ability, aptitude, achievements, and accomplishments, and it's like they see dollar signs. Look at every single form of black music. First of all, every form of music is black music. But when you look at every genre of music with its black or African origin, the people who've made the most money off it have been white. Let's call the road jazz music, 1000% African. But no black man has made more money from playing jazz than Kenny G. Look at reggae music, Bob Marley, icon of all icons. Bob Marley never had a #1 hit on the Billboard charts, but UB40 did. White reggae group who sang Red, Red Wine, and even Calypso. No Calypso artist ever had No, I'm not even going there.
Buster Poindexter.
Thank you. Buster Poindexter and his Banshees of Blue. They sang over Arrow's Hot.
He was Casey Kasem top 10 American top 40.
Yeah. Not even the brothers who sang over Ansel Douglas's
Who Let the Dogs Out?
Yeah. So you tell me a white man made the most money off Calypso, a white man made the most money off reggae, white people made the most money off jazz, even hip hop. There were no #1 rap albums until the Beastie Boys. And then even had Vanilla Ice for a while. Now they have Eminem. But all of them had #1 hits. So when you look at the social mechanisms behind these institutions, you find that there is a pattern of exploitation where anytime we have that talent, and this is why my leader and teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, was banned from Facebook about a year and a half ago because he identified that as our relationship with the Jews. He said Michael Jackson's talent, all of our great artists and entertainers, singers and songwriters, once we go out there and perform, some of the Jewish people are making millions of dollars by the snap. But we are happy, even in Straight Outta Compton by NWA, Ice Cube explained, look, they were given $75,000 contracts. And they felt on top of the world for that. But because Ice Cube himself started listening to Minister Farrakhan, because he was visiting Minister Farrakhan at home, and Minister Farrakhan would say, you you don't know what you're worth. And then he left the group, but MC Ren, the funny thing is, out of all of them, it's MC Ren who ended up joining the Nation of Islam. But we celebrate that. Now, I believe there is a soca mafia in this country in the same way that has this objective of exploiting black talent and, again, keeping away from the consciousness. keeping away from those messages that might wake the people up. And so, yes, there is something about us. Yes, we have been conditioned as a result of the Willie Lynch syndrome, where there were investments made into us embellishing our own differences, division, and disunity. Again, the same crabs in the barrel mentality. Yes, that's a major factor. But one thing, for example, when it comes to me in Trinidad, I've raised the issue that no one feels threatened about the idea of a Chinese man teaching Chinese people Chinese history. No one is threatened by the idea of a white man teaching white people white history, or a Syrian man teaching Syrian people Syrian history, or an Indian man teaching Indian people Indian history. But when a black man teaches black people black consciousness, that just might mean that we will stop surrendering all of our dollars in the supermarkets of other people who want to say all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter, but then say sorry about it, and then we go back. And again, that's another question that we raise. Why is it that we have to wait for someone else to be racist and disrespectful and degrade black people for us to say, let's go support a black business? Come on. Yeah. Okay, so they're racist, right? I'm going to support a black business. But we're the only people who have to think of supporting our own as a secondary option. For everyone else, that is the primary interest. And so when you just try to wake up our people with those kinds of examples, they call it racism. Again, because something about a black man teaching consciousness to black people means less economic support, less customers, less shoppers, less of us just taking all of our money and shoveling it into their bank accounts.
Well, one of the questions raised right here is, I want to hear his thoughts on repatriation.
Well, first of all, Trinidad is actually the home of the consciousness of repatriation. And repatriation is also item number 2 on the 10-point plan of action for reparations. So repatriation would have been the beginning of the reparations mission, because when they announced that they were going to free us from slavery, the African Muslim Mandingos of East Port of Spain, of the Bath Street area, proposed legislation to the British Parliament to send us back to Africa. Said, look, if you're going to free us, it doesn't make sense you freeing us here in this strange land. Send us back to Africa. That was the first repatriation call. Came out of Trinidad in 1833. But then, as more and more generations passed, of course, the offspring of those original Africans would not have known anything about Africa. So they would have said, well, look, let's build a place for ourselves here. So mainly through the Rastafarian movement, there is a repatriation objective. And there have been some groups like Shashamane Sunrise coming out of Jamaica who have repatriated to Ethiopia and bought homes and tracts of land and inviting other people to come back. As a matter of fact, some of my own Nation of Islam colleagues from England are currently exploring the idea of repatriation. I'm to appear on an online panel similar to this with them in a couple of weeks, talking about that. So yeah, I mean, I respect it. I respect it. It's not necessarily on my agenda itself, but I respect that. I respect that mission very much.
So when you say your agenda as the black agenda, what exactly is your agenda? What exactly is the black agenda?
In particular, empowerment of our people in the Caribbean. I mean, I am the Eastern Caribbean representative of Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And the wider organization that we established, the Black Agenda Project, we acquired 3/4 of an acre of land from the state in 2015. And with no government money, no business support, no corporate money, we, with our own hands, constructed a 6,000 square foot education center, which is in Success Laventille, which we named after Kwame Ture. And out of that, I mean, we just had our 8th African Expo on Saturday. African Expo number 9 is coming up on October 30th. Every Friday, we have the African Farmers Market, where instead of our people who grow food, wrapping it in plastic and sending it to massa stores, we bring together the Black farmers and we have our own open market every Friday. Just drive in, get your produce, drive back out. We have free lessons, CSEC, CXC classes in 8 subjects for our students: maths, English, literature, accounts, business, social studies, human and social biology, and study skills. We have about 70 students enrolled. We have workshops, seminars, public speaking. I do my lectures on a weekly basis there. I mean, we're a fully operational, full-time schedule organization with free services for our people. So yes, I do get out. Well, it's been a while, but you know, I spend a lot of time in America and England from time to time, and across the Caribbean, Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados. But you know, I'm grounded here. I still consider myself to be grounded here in Trinidad.
I want to kind of go back to a little earlier on in the conversation. I want to put this question to you because we were talking about movies earlier on, right? And why do you think there isn't a movie yet of Mansa Musa?
Good question. Good question.
First of all, who is Mansa Musa? For those who don't know, and brother, you're going a little in and out. You was kind of soft. Now I know when you had this thing on the other ear.
Yeah.
Right.
When you put on the.
Oh, well, we were hearing you better without it.
Seriously?
And when you took it, when you actually took it off here, you got a little clearer without it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
But beautiful now.
Much better.
Good?
Yeah.
All right, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Mansa Musa, according to most reports, was the richest man who ever lived.
Serious?
Yes.
Richest man in the world.
Richest man, he was a black man.
Wait, you know what Mansa Musa?
I never heard about Mansa.
You don't know what Mansa
Musa?
Musa?
No.
Seriously, come on,
a
man.
rich black man.
Mansa Musa was the richest man in the world and was a black man.
Not just
But
the
go
richest
ahead.
man in the world, but the richest man who ever lived. When you compare, when you compare the economy at the time, you know. So Mansa Musa was a king in Africa, in Mali, which is where the University of Timbuktu was. Timbuktu to this day remains one of the most famous cities ever because it was a center of knowledge for the whole world, basically. And Mansa Musa, of course, he was a Muslim, a king, and he would make his sacred pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, as I made mine in 2013. And he would take so much gold as gifts and just give out on the streets. Wow. He would take so much gold that he would destabilize the economy of that city, which, I mean, imagine someone giving away so much money that it shatters the economy. And, you know, that was Mansa Musa. And I guess, well, I'm sure at some point a movie about him would be made. But, you know, there probably isn't as much archived information about his social life, per se. Unlike like with Malcolm X and, you know, so many other people. Even though the
Malcolm X do a lot of research.
Yeah. But even though the Malcolm X movie was kind of butchered, you know, on his life. Oh, don't talk about Godfather of Harlem.
Why is it butchered? Why is it butchered? Explain.
The Malcolm X movie?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I appreciate their efforts in making a film about Malcolm X, but there were so many historical inaccuracies about it. Some were really terrible. So 3 of the closest people to Malcolm X were not portrayed in the film. Those were Minister Louis Farrakhan, who was the person that he went to explain why he was starting to fall out. Muhammad Ali, who is a very close friend of his as well, who stopped talking to him completely. And also Imam Warith Deen Muhammad, who was the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who Malcolm X was planning to start an organization with. You know, neither of the three of them were in the film at all, and those were three most influential persons in Malcolm X's life. Also, the person who introduced him to Islam was a character in prison with him. I think his name was Bumbry or something, who gave him some drink. That was a totally fictitious character. The person who introduced Malcolm X to Islam was his brother Reginald. He used to visit him from outside the prison and bring. So, you know, so they made up all these fictitious characters. The portrayal of Elijah Muhammad as well was kind of off, but it was worse in Godfather of Harlem. You know, they kind of made it like, so Godfather of Harlem, for example, makes it almost look like Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad were some kind of equals or rivals in one or another.
Yeah.
Malcolm X was one of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's several students. So, I mean, Elijah Muhammad had about 1,000 just like Malcolm X. And that's not even an exaggeration.
Wow.
You know, he had about 9 just like Malcolm X in New York alone. You know, I remember as well, Malcolm X died in the Audubon Ballroom speaking to 400 people. There's nowhere on planet Earth that Elijah Muhammad would go to, or Minister Farrakhan would go to speak in an auditorium of 400 people. Minister Farrakhan speaks in stadiums, 60, 70,000 people. Elijah Muhammad, you know, I mean, when he did his lectures and so on, all his people would have to be standing because there's just no room. And Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, remember, they purchased farmland for black people. They built schools, they built clinics, they built restaurants, they built bakeries, supermarkets. They were businessmen. They had the most widely circulated black newspaper in the world, The Final Call. So it was a massive enterprise, you know. Malcolm X was a great man who we love and admire, but he was just one of the many representatives. And so they embellish him because he left the organization that is still in existence, bigger and stronger than it ever was before, you know. But hopefully one day we'll see some more content on Mansa Musa.
Yeah, man. Now,
what are your thoughts on Black Wall Street?
Right. Well, there were actually 2 Black Wall Streets. One was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but the other one was in Greenwood, North Carolina. And the one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and again, the Black Wall Street massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I mean, of course, it's pure white racism and the discomfort with seeing black success. But even Tulsa, Oklahoma came after a series of other massacres just like that one. You had the Slocum massacre in Texas. Again, but you know, again, it's funny how Black Wall, maybe because of the name Black Wall Street, makes it to be world famous as this classic case of racism. But that was our life. You know, that was the norm for what we would have experienced. And so, yeah, I mean, it's good that that story is being told. But on my television program on Gael, which is on Sundays at 8 o'clock, I did do a program about Black Wall Street for the 100th anniversary. But I dedicated a significant amount of the time to other similar episodes.
Nice. No, always say you talk, but of course you've mentioned reference to Malcolm X many times. Of course, he was closer to the the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
But also just before around that time was Martin Luther King.
Yes.
What are your thoughts in terms of Martin Luther King and his method? Of course, he wanted more equality and that sort of thing. But Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. So how you put?
Well, you know, they were both on opposite ends of an ideology, and we respect Dr. Martin Luther King, and we love Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, I have publications from Dr. Martin Luther King behind me here, magnificent man, but we differ ideologically with him because while And he changed too. He changed towards his last days. So he said, well, look, there's segregation, racial segregation in America. We have to fight against it. So they're not letting black people in the restaurant. We have to march, riot. Well, not riot. We have to march and protest until they let us in. They don't want to let black people in that hotel over there. Right. We have to march and protest to get black people. They don't want black people to use those public toilets or drink from this water fountain. We have to march for equal rights to get them to do it. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, no, not at all. Said, if they don't want you in their restaurants, and if they don't want you black people in their hotels, and if they don't want you black people in their transport, public transport, have some self-respect and build your own.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Muhammad started to build black-owned restaurants, black-owned supermarkets, black-owned accommodation.
But question is, right, the question is here, because I'm also gaining knowledge on what we're talking about. When that happened, though, was it a situation where just as blacks weren't able to go into white restaurants, was it the same way around?
Absolutely not.
No.
You see,
white people gotta go anywhere they want.
That's how they think. Now, listen, I took note at the beginning of this conversation, right, where Third Base put out, I don't want to say it was a disclaimer, but it struck a chord with me when he said, nothing here is going to be racist or anything like that. All right, I heard that. But I say, and my mantra is, if I am lying, stop me. But if I'm speaking the truth, then leave me alone. And many people are not so much concerned about who's lying and who's telling the truth. Many people are concerned about the truth that they simply don't want to hear because it is inconvenient to their circumstances at that particular time. And while Martin Luther King was the darling of white America, the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan were seen as the issue. And in 1966, Dr. Martin Luther King sat down with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he said to him, you refer to the white man as the devil. Because Elijah Muhammad said, when you pick up your Bible and read about a dragon and a beast and a serpent and a warlord and bloodshed all over the earth and all that, he said it's not talking about any creature coming up out of the sea or any dragon flying in the sky. He said, this is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, said the white race has been responsible for non-stop massacre, mass murder, genocide, torture, rape, and bloodshed on every single part of planet Earth. And when Dr. Martin Luther King said to him, he said, are all white people devils? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to him, well, there's no way for you to know if all snakes are poisonous. But you know what to do to avoid being bitten. That's the wisdom that he shared with him. Did you know that Kwame Ture, our own Kwame Ture, was a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King? Kwame Ture was the president of the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And he started, look at all the old videos of Dr. Martin Luther King. You see a very tall, slim, handsome black man walking alongside him, very, very young, and they'll interview him. That's our own Kwame Ture, born on Oxford Street in Port of Spain. But Kwame Ture also went to meet with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1966. And that is when he broke away and formed the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And in one of Dr. Martin Luther King's last speeches, and this is why they killed him, Dr. Martin Luther King said in one of his last speeches, he quoted a philosopher by the name of Victor Hugo. And he said, if there is darkness, sin will be committed. He said, but the guilty one is not so much he who commits the sin in comparison to he who created the darkness. And then Martin Luther King said, white America has created the darkness that black people are finding themselves committing sin in. Within less than a year, Dr. Martin Luther King was dead, because that's not what they knew him for. They push him. He's the one who said, we must all hold hands, and I have a dream that one day whites and blacks will be living together, and so on and so forth. When Dr. Martin Luther King started calling for boycotts, he said, these same people who are perpetrating acts of oppression against us have supermarkets in our neighborhood, and we're spending money there. So that was like a total turnaround. But it's an evolution of consciousness. And you see, the sad thing about it is that, you know how we interpret all of this? We see it as boiling down to one thing, and one thing only. Not freedom, not justice, not equality, not financial freedom, not economic liberation, not owning our own buildings and businesses and stepping out there with some kind of economic power. No. Our main concern becomes, is it that you don't like white people? Do you hate white people? And that becomes the center point of the argument. And the big irony of it is, and I mean, this is hard, but since we come into this kind of consciousness, we probably have a better relationship with white people than we would have ever had before, because we've earned our respect. And that respect.
I just have a question that has popped in my head, and I want to ask you the question, right? So, you're married. All right. Could you see yourself marrying a white woman?
That was the question I had to. Yeah. Like what are your thoughts on interracial relationships and marrying out of black people, marrying out of the race, whether it's white, Indian, Syrian, whatever?
Right. Well, no, I can't see myself ever marrying a white woman, but just as much as I cannot see myself marrying a white woman, I cannot see a white man being asked the same question about whether or not he will marry a black woman. And even if both the answers are no, or both the answers are yes, the interpretation of the two is completely different. Because we would expect a white man to marry a white woman. But when it comes to a black man who's openly declaring that he cannot see himself marrying a white woman, it's almost as if we're asking for forgiveness for thinking this way, or we're making an excuse for having that opinion, or we're apologizing for loving our own first. Listen, the black woman is the mother of civilization, queen of the planet Earth, goddess of the universe. Minister Farrakhan teaches that, as the Bible says, God made man in his own image and likeness. We would have all read that before.
Right.
But geography, geology, anthropology, biology, and genetics all prove.
I like where we going, because I have another question.
Well, of course, you need to believe God is black.
All those studies prove that the black man was the original man, and that African people were the first human beings on earth, and that African created civilization.
So I was going right there.
Okay, Jay, read them my mind, but
so the womb of the black woman is the workshop of God, and the means by which he reproduces his own image and likeness. So that black woman is like a co-creator with God for human existence. Which man in their right mind would not prefer a black woman as his wife to reproduce that same image of God coming out of Africa?
Because there I was going, because my thing, I was about to ask you, obviously you believe in that we were, when I say black people, were the first.
Everyone who doesn't believe that.
Right. So what you're saying basically is that because of that, a black man shouldn't marry a black woman.
I shouldn't.
Because the pureness of what he believes.
Why should anyone give a reason as to why they would marry their own kind? Would you ask an Indian man for a reason why he'll marry an Indian woman? Or a Chinese man for a reason why he'll marry a Chinese woman? I mean, and as well too, there's some deep history behind the lust and desire over black flesh, period. Because the white slave masters used to repeatedly rape the black woman and commit some of the most excessive and consistent crimes against humanity in their crimes against our women. Meanwhile, we as black men were used as stud horses to breed and reproduce more slaves to buy and sell for his economic gain. And so we have come to a point now that a major part of our fall is our loss of respect for the black woman. She is marketed, objectified, abused, misused, paraded in public for entertainment purposes. And that is living proof and evidence that we are a defeated man. Because for you to take the woman of a people and parade her on a stage and then dollars be collected for entertainment purposes, that's our mother of civilization. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, heaven lies at the foot of mother. Minister Farrakhan said, you judge the standard of civilization of a society by the standard of the woman and how the woman is treated. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, when you educate a man, you educate an individual. But when you educate a woman, you educate an entire nation, because the mother is the first teacher of the children. And then the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that 75% of his teaching is for the black woman. Only 25% of his teaching was for the black man. So we hold the black woman up on a pedestal. And I say this to you too, my beloved brother. We fight for our...
Yeah, I want to see with the white woman, RKG. Okay.
Well, you know, I know I love my Spanish dances, but anyhow,
that has nothing to do with me.
No. But check it out, yo. Check it out, right now. So my girl, she is local Spanish and East Indian and African. She's mixed. My mom is East Indian and my father is African. You know what I mean? So
let me just pause you there for a moment. I reject this idea of mixed race.
Once you're not white, you're black.
And that is...
I was going there. Where?
A philosophy that has been conjured up to attempt to divide, rule, and conquer black people. According to the slave registries, if you were half black and half white, you were a mulatto. If you were 3/4 white and 1/4 black, you were a quadroon. If you were 7/8 white and 1/8 black, you were an octoroon. On the other side of the mulatto scale, there was Metsi, Courtesy, Sambo, and Cabre. So what they did is they took all different amounts and proportions and quantities or admixtures of black blood, and in their estimation of our degrees of biological ethnicity, they gave us different human rights. So the mulatto had more rights than the Sambo, but the octoroon had more rights than the quadroon. We reject that. We are all African people with just, it doesn't matter how much or how, so if that, but I'm a black man. So is it that I'm less of an African than a brother who might be darker than me? In fact, there's one particular brother who's much darker than me, who's definitely no more of an African than I am. And he's holding a lot of press conferences these days, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But we will not permit our enemies to divide, rule, and conquer us like that, because this one is darker, that one is lighter, This one is a bit more mixed. That one's a bit less mixed. This one's hair is a bit straighter than that one. No, we're talking about human beings. And the same kind of racism that we do our best to eradicate and eliminate is now creeping back into the minds of us and still working overtime in that light-skin privilege issue that exists among us. So we reject that. All of us have some mixture in us because our ancestors were raped. We are the product of rapists. So who's going to go around now with a calculator and redetermine what quantity or percentage each of us have of our blackness? No, our genesis goes all the way back to Africa. Regardless of how dark or how light we are, it goes back there.
Now, in terms of God, let me ask you, in terms of like God, well, of course, you don't believe in a white Jesus. Is God what I mean? The God that they portray, then, or like the Christian, the God that they portray in the Catholic Church, is he who we should see he is?
You got me off guard there. All I'll say, do you remember Archbishop Edward Gilbert?
Edward Gilbert, yes. Yeah.
Right. The first white archbishop in Trinidad was since independence. Remember him?
Yeah.
Right. I interviewed him on my radio program. White man from Boston. This was 20 years ago. It would have been in September 2. So exactly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I asked him, do you accept that Jesus the Messiah was a black African? And he said,
what he said?
What else could he say? What else could he say? He said, yes, I do. And he had to. Who doesn't? In fact, we are probably the last people to accept that Jesus was black. Again, in this book, Black Studies, there's a whole section on the historical and anthropological as well as theological research on Jesus being an African. First of all, he was born in Northeast Africa. When you look at the map of Israel, Palestine, all of that is Africa. The only description that we have of him is that he had hair like lamb's wool and feet like burnished brass, as if they were burnt in an oven. Burnished brass is already darkish brown. But if you burnish it in excess, it becomes black. And they saw the man's feet as black. Forget about the Bible. 4th century Jewish historian Josephus wrote a physical description face to face of him seeing Jesus in person. He said he was a small man, simple appearance, black skin, matted hair. But they were African men in Africa. What else could they be? There weren't any white people around there at the time. And so there are numerous references that I could give you. In this book, Black Studies, we have about, I don't know, maybe at least 12 or 13 references of Jesus. But let me hit you with something heavy, though. Seeing me on that. And this is heavy. So we're familiar with what we learn about Jesus. And I don't want anyone to get upset. But we learn about Jesus in church and so on. Did you know that thousands of years before Jesus even walked the earth, in Africa, there was a religious system of Mayat? And out of the offshoots of organized religion, because we always were theological in Africa, we always had spiritually based philosophies and societies. But thousands of years ago in Africa, there was a religious order that had God as Amen-Ra. And God, Amen-Ra, mysteriously impregnated a virgin called Isis. Isis gave birth to a child named Horus. Now let me just put a pause. I don't know whether this happened or not. I wasn't there, but this is the mythology. This is the religious mythology, right? So Amen-Ra, God, mysteriously impregnated the virgin Isis. Isis had a child, Horus. 3 kings came bearing gifts to Horus. There was no record of his life from age 12 to age 30. At age 30, Horus was baptized by his cousin, Anep. At age 33, Horus was arrested by the state for blasphemy. He was put to death. He rose from the dead 3 days later and was seated at the right hand of Amun-Ra, and he was given the power to judge the living and the dead. That is an ancient, sacred African religion. I'm sure it sounds familiar to you. But 2 more points, though.
Mm-hmm.
One point is that this story actually reoccurred 15 times in other civilizations before Jesus walked the earth. Quetzalcoatl, the god of Mexico. Fushai of China. Zoroaster of Persia. Krishna of India. All of them, same story. God mysteriously impregnated a virgin. 3 kings came. No record of the life from 12 to 30. Put to death at 30. Rose from the dead. So that happens 16 times. And then Jesus is born. But hold on. That only became the story of Jesus's life after the Nicene Conference in Rome after 325 AD. In 325 AD, there was a council of bishops. They came together to vote on the theological story behind Jesus. Was Jesus born of a virgin?
Stick a pen in it. One
Now,
second.
and
I want to bring Orlando up for the live.
Oh gosh.
No Catholic priest, no Anglican priest, no Catholic official. None of them can deny what I'm saying because this is their history. This isn't some Muslim conspiracy theory, all right?
Octave, comedy light, comedy light, Octave, comedy light.
Yeah,
Comedy live, let's see your face, man. Come on, man.
Comedy light, Octave.
Yes, man.
We want to see your face. Give us some light.
Blessing.
Greetings.
Yeah, man.
I see you in the conversation.
Knowledge. I love the knowledge, you know. I love the knowledge. I'm taking him in. Continue, bro.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So after they had this vote, then all of a sudden, that was the story that the telling is in the church. And now you stop the average person on the street and they will tell you, no, those are facts. That is what happened. But that's how it is.
Why we were never taught that?
Where did you go for the teaching?
Fact.
If you came to the Nation of Islam, you'd have been taught that.
Fact.
Yeah. Now, a question. Between in the Nation of Islam and, of course, the Jamaat al-Muslimi, what is the, well, I mean, of course, you all both the Quran, but what is the difference? Any difference in ideology? What is the difference between the Nation of Islam and the Jamaat al-Muslimi?
Well, up to yesterday, myself and Imam Yassin Abu Bakr sat down in my office for about 3 hours, engaging in a number of matters that have gotten to our attention. I don't know if you heard about what happened in the prison, but basically, you know, we all believe in the Holy Quran as our law.
Yeah.
We may be structured differently, have different history, different background, but Islam comes out of the Holy Quran.
Yeah.
That is the book of law of life. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is largely responsible for African people being reintroduced to Islam today, he said he would not rest until the Quran becomes the law by which all black people govern their lives by. Now, people would say of the Nation of Islam that we're not Sunni Muslims or not Orthodox Muslims, but our law comes from the Quran. And it's also a reflection on a lot of misunderstanding about that book.
Yeah.
So that there are a lot of things that people think is in the Quran that is not.
Yeah.
For example, people think the Quran says you must wear a taj and grow a beard and, you know, wear a jilab. None of that is. In fact, I can tell you 10 things about the Quran. I'll probably just tell you about 5. that would surprise you. Okay? One, the most frequently mentioned prophet in the Holy Quran is Moses.
Moses.
By far, Moses is mentioned by name 145 times. Abraham.
Why that is, though?
That is because the scriptures say that the liberator for the people will be a man like unto Moses. But Noah is mentioned in the Quran 46 times. Abraham is mentioned 72 times. Jesus is mentioned 25 times in the Quran. Muhammad, by name, is mentioned 4 times in the Quran.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. There are people who believe if you pick up the book, it's all about Muhammad. No, it's more about Moses and Noah and Abraham and Jesus and Solomon and David and Lot and Jonah.
Yeah.
All of them appear by name in the Quran more than Muhammad, whose name is only there 4 times. Also, the Quran refers to Islam as the religion of Abraham. Not the religion of Muhammad or Jesus, the religion of Abraham.
Yeah.
And says anyone who does not practice the religion of Abraham makes a fool out of himself, because Abraham taught the whole concept of monotheism.
Yes, the worship of one God, yeah.
Also, the Quran does not anywhere list as a punishment stoning to death for anything. And again, people have this belief that the Quran says to stone this one to death. No, nowhere in the Quran does it say anything about stoning to death. Another one that a lot of people don't know is that the Quran says it is better for a man to have one wife
than 4, yeah.
Because I was actually going there.
Again,
one wife?
There people believe that the Quran says, you have to have 4 wives. So like if you only have 3, you have to look for a 4th one. No. It says a man may have 2 or 3 or 4 wives. But if you feel that you cannot do justice by them, then marry just one.
Right.
And one is better for you. And later on in Surah 4, verse 125, it actually says, you cannot do justice between wives, even if you wished it. So one is better.
And what about
So what with that said, go ahead, Orlando.
What about the referrals to the people of the book, that the Quran mentioned, the people of the book,
yeah.
which functions under the Torah.
Yes. Yeah, and again, those passages verify the universality of our belief. So take, for example, Surah 5 verse 68 in the Quran says that you follow no good until you also follow the Old Testament or Torah and the New Testament.
Yes, brother.
And there are some Muslims who would say, no, don't read the Bible. Don't read the Bible. That's crazy. Surah 3 says Allah, God, revealed the Old Testament. Then he revealed the New Testament to verify that was in the Old Testament. Then he revealed the Quran to verify that which was in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And look at some of the names of the chapters.
So what you're saying, read the Bible and the Quran.
The Quran encourages it.
You have to.
Look at some of the names of the chapters in the Quran. So, chapter 10.
No. That's all. No. What I want to say, right? I have conversation with people, but we have some situations where people would say, don't read the Quran, all right, or don't read the Bible based on their faith. But what you are saying is, you can read the Quran and the Bible.
The Quran encourages it.
What we're saying is that you have to do that, because the Quran and the Torah, the Bible, confirms each other. The book does not contradict each other.
Verifies. And to be honest, beloved, to put those 2 words in the same sentence, read and don't, so that's not good for black people. You know, Malcolm X once said, our enemy said, if you want to hide something from a black man,
put it in a book.
And now we talk about
why that is though.
Well, because we have been subject to a colonial educational system where we pick up the books, we just see negative about ourselves.
So I wanted to ask you, right? I wanted to ask you, what about the Moors?
Mm-hmm. Right. So the Moors were North African Muslims who are best known for conquering Spain from the 7th to the 11th century and establishing Spain as a Islamic kingdom. As a matter of fact, this has very special relevance to us as Trinidadians.
Yeah.
Because the first Africans that came to Trinidad, first of all, the first Africans that came to Trinidad were Muslims, and the first Muslims that came to Trinidad were Africans.
Yes.
We came here in the year 1592, but not from Africa. We came from Spain.
Right.
And we would have been imprisoned and enslaved African Muslims.
Right.
In a city called Cordoba.
Right.
Or Cordova.
Right.
And bought from the Captain Antonio de Berry, who's the governor of Trinidad, wrote to the King of Spain, asking for 400 enslaved Africans to help him look for gold. Because there weren't slave plantations in Trinidad as yet, because they thought that Trinidad was the land of gold, called El Dorado.
Yeah.
And they bought slaves to look for us there. So Trinidad remained underpopulated for a very long period of time. But that's part of our Islamic history and heritage. And then, of course, more of us came after. But, I mean, all the Muslims in Trinidad were Africans for the first 250 years before the first East Indian Muslims came. And then they feared African people being Muslims. So while the Indians were allowed to remain practicing Islam, they had to stop Africa. They had to beat Islam out of us.
Yeah.
Because Islam is an anti-slavery religious doctrine.
Yeah.
Surah 2 verse 177 describes our religion. It says you must believe in the book, God, the judgment, the last day, that you must give charity to the family, the native kin, the wayfarer, the orphan, who begs, keep up prayer, fast for the month of Ramadan, go on the pilgrimage, and remain patient in times of hardship and adversity, and involve yourselves in the emancipation of slaves. Surah 90 verse 6 says the same thing. The Muslim must take the uphill road. And what will make you understand what the uphill road is? It is the freeing of a slave. You cannot be a Muslim and a slave at the same time, because the Quran says in Surah 2, persecution is worse than slaughter, which means it is better to die fighting for justice, standing on your feet, than to lie down, submitting to oppression on your knees. Yeah. And they could not have African people thinking like that. So they Europeanized us, they Christianized us, they brainwashed us out of Islam.
Certified, popified.
Now all this start from with the youths in school, Brother David. Of course, you know, we went to Trinity, we did history, which they call it history. Do you think the history that we are teaching in schools is any, when you used to our black youth, should it be taught differently? What can we do?
Well, it is useful content. Caribbean history, you know, in going through a lot of these textbooks, it is some very powerful information. But somehow it does not have any kind of transformative power to the student. At the Kwame Ture Center, again, history is not one of the subjects that we teach formally, but all of the students there, whether you're doing maths or English or whatever it is, science, and that's POB, business accounts, social studies, we incorporate Black history and Black consciousness as part of any of the subjects.
Yeah.
Because that is how our empowerment will be recaptured, through a deeper kind of knowledge. Take, for example, we teach in maths, right? And we let the students know, look, if 1,000 poor people grow $1,000 worth of food in a poor community in 1 year, at the end of 12 months, that is $1 million in added food security, which will translate into $1 million less in street crimes, petty robberies, and $1 million added into stability in that same neighborhood.
Yeah.
But again, we don't put security and food in the same sentence. But you place ideas in the minds of the young children like that, and then they grow with those kinds of ideas and develop several other more ideas. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told Minister Farrakhan, he said, this is how I want you to think when it comes to black people. He said, if we have 30 million black people who eat 3 slices of bread per day, that means they eat 90 million slices of bread. In a week time, they will eat 63 million slices of bread. In a year, 37,760,000,000 slices of bread. Get the children to calculate how much land must black people own under wheat cultivation in order to provide our people with their daily bread. And you broaden the thinking of the child like that, he's thinking about solving problems, not going down to the 1% to get a job, and then go back home and celebrate because we got minimum wage employment. That's when you're training us, and that is one of the reasons. I know hate is a strong word, but that's one of the reasons I despise the political process, because it encourages black people to submit to a system where we employees vote and have all the billions of dollars in our treasury shoved into the bank accounts of 1% group. And then we are saying, but we need them because they employ us. And we need them because they give us jobs. But we never teach our children in political circles to become independent thinkers, to create jobs for ourselves, to create employment instead of just looking for employment. And
but isn't that, I mean, but David, isn't that something, I mean, within us? I mean, we seem to want this kind of, this handout and this, gimme kind of way, I mean, is it institutionalized in us? I mean, why do we always kind of think like that? Why we can't get, like, I always say, all right, if there's a carpenter, a mason, a joiner, different tradesmen, why can't we get together? Why can't we get together, form our own companies? You know what I mean? And do something.
Because it's a full circle.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were talking about.
Make a job instead of taking a job. Why can't we?
That's exactly what we're doing. That is the process. Okay, look, think of this scenario, right? In the poorest part of the ghetto, you have 2 next door neighbors. One is an electrician, one is a plumber.
Right.
One day, the plumber has an electrical problem in his home, and the electrician has a plumbing problem in his home. Both of them work for the same boss down in the West. They get up and go to work. The boss sends, the boss from the 1%, sends the electrician to the plumber's home, and he sends the plumber to the electrician's home. Both of them fix the job, charge $400 to the wife, and both of them take that $400 each back to the boss, who pays each of them $100 for their service and keeps $600 for himself. Now, he doesn't know anything about neither plumbing nor electrical, but he just made $600 on our failure to unite, to form a...
So why can't we do that? Why can't we do that for ourselves?
But that's what we're in the midst of doing. And we cannot use words like can't when it comes to our ability, especially when we're talking about our destiny.
All right, why aren't? All right, no, I won't can't. Why aren't?
Why the process? Why the process so slow?
Well, because we need to speed it up, but it's definitely in motion. And it's like our generation. That's the slowness of our generation.
I was just about to say that it's something.
No, David Mohammed, I want to put this question to you. After after it all, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be?
I'm not so much interested in a personal legacy per se, but I'll say this, and it has to do with just purely succession planning. The job just has to go on. I celebrated my 51st birthday a couple of weeks back. I started doing this when I was 22. And I would go to Woodford Square and just start shouting at the top of my voice, talking about African history and all the great things that Black people have done. And then a little crowd will gather around, then a larger crowd will gather around, and then we'll have these significant crowds. Then I started to rent the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, and it just went from stage to stage. But here what, I was on an interview in a radio station with Philadelphia a couple nights ago. And I reflected on this. When I was 22, most of the people in my audiences were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. When I was in my 30s, most of the people in my audiences were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. When I was in my 40s, again, most of the audiences, my age, a little bit younger, but mainly older. But now that I've just crossed the threshold of 5 decades, within the last 12 months, most of my in-person audiences have been between the ages of 18 and 25. And that is through the Kwame Ture Education Center. Because we have the lessons program, but again, we teach the Black consciousness, we teach the African history, we teach the study skills, we teach the empowerment, the public speaking workshops. And now not only are we teaching and training young people, but we're preparing them for leadership as well. So I could go first thing in the morning, and we have already a whole cadre of young people. Same thing with the African expos and the Black markets that we have. We get the young people involved. So when I was 22, working like that, I didn't realize at the time that I was a different kind of 22-year-old. But looking back now, if we could empower our young people, I mean, it's been quite a journey, you know, especially since the launch of Black Studies. That's taken me to a lot of countries, to a lot of cities, a lot of book launches, and almost everywhere I go in the States, well, especially in New York, someone is in the audience to arrange another session to invite you back in 3 months or 6 months and so on. But that's
I want to talk about your book, right? But I have a question here. What makes a great leader?
Selflessness.
Fact.
Selflessness.
Fact.
No personal motive that I must receive this or I must be empowered. It's a thankless job.
Fact.
You know, it's completely thankless. And I say, right, to my leader, there's nothing that I can ever do to repay him for what he has done for me. It's impossible. It's impossible. First time I met Minister Farrakhan in person was in 1993 for his 40th wedding anniversary. That was with his family in St. Kitts. I was a total stranger to him. All he heard about is that there was this young brother in Trinidad who was setting up something. He invited me to spend his 40th wedding anniversary as a total stranger with his family. When we were leaving, he gave me $400 cash. And he said to me, come up to Los Angeles in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I go up to Los Angeles for the annual convention. And here I am in Los Angeles, 3 weeks after. I'm sitting next to Isaac Hayes, the original Shaft. I'm sitting across from Ice Cube and Ice-T. In front of me is Martin Lawrence, Johnny Gill, not from I-95, Rosie Perez, Stevie Wonder, and it just...
And he saw you?
Who?
Stevie Wonder.
Trinity humor, Trinity humor. You know, but here I was.
You didn't see it, but I guess you heard the message.
Nowhere, and then 3 weeks later, I'm in this. You know, and it's like it was unreal. And then on average, every year from that time to now, on average, at least once a year, I've been in his company. I was there at the Million Man March. I was there at the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March. You know, I've traveled with him to about 7 or 8 different Caribbean countries. We've met with prime ministers, opposition leaders, governors. You know, it's
so we definitely need more men like Minister Falcon to see the great and young black men,
so
and to take them and make them even greater. Yeah?
So what I'm saying is, it's impossible for me to repay him. It's impossible for me to pay him back for what he did for me. But what I can do is I can build others forward.
Right. Yeah.
So I was 23 years old at that time. 23 years old. So when I see another 23-year-old now, I have to do all that I can to give them that kind of opportunity, to give them that hearing, to give them whatever chance I may not have had. And not just one, but across our whole community. And that is why I've largely dedicated myself to the community.
Yeah. Do you see your Kwame Tourist Center being in like Tobago or South? I mean, if given the opportunity, you spread it across? Yeah?
Well, yes, but it might not be me. It might be the next generation.
Okay.
You know, that was...
It will take some time.
That wasn't easy to do, you know. Because, I mean, we were building literally brick by brick. We had almost a full acre. And we laid that foundation. And, I mean, money was just trickling in. And the thing is, too, the amount of cash that we spent on materials, it was miraculous. That building is worth between $6 and $7 million. But we spent $700,000 on materials. Because it was free labor from the brothers in the organization.
All right.
Our scaffolding, which belonged to Imam Abu Bakr. We had that scaffolding. The daily rental on that scaffolding would have been about $200 a day. We had it for 3 years.
Wow.
3 years.
That was like the Red House.
Wow.
You understand?
Wow.
So when you add up all the goodwill, well,
Carry pay that. Carry pay that.
You have a question, Orlando?
No.
Yeah.
Orlando have a question.
To stray from that a little bit. I wanna go in a different direction with my question. What and the black flag that is about to rise in the east?
Wow. That's very heavy. You know, that's very heavy. And the idea of a Mahdi, the Mahdi is the self-guided one of whom it has been prophesied in Islam to come back. And the Mahdi is said will be accompanied by the Messiah.
Right, yeah.
Now, my position on that is this. When we look at the Bible, Genesis chapter 15, verses 13, 14, and 15, talk about God's chosen people. It doesn't matter what religion you are.
Yeah.
God's chosen people, and it says they will be slaves in a strange land.
Yes.
For 400 years.
Yes, correct.
That they'll be taken out of their homeland.
Yes.
Brought across to a strange land, and they'll be slaves for 400
years.
And that God will judge that people who had his chosen people in bondage.
Yeah.
All right? So we have to know something about who these chosen people of God are. But then Isaiah chapter 20, verses 4 and 5, pinpoint specifically by description who these God's chosen people are. And it
Yes.
says that they are captives of Africa,
Correct.
taken out of Egypt and
Correct.
Ethiopia,
Yes.
naked, in chains, with their buttocks uncovered, being made to feel ashamed of their homeland. You can stop right there.
Correct.
Which other people are ashamed of their homeland? Not one Chinese person says, I'm not Chinese. Not one Indian person says, I'm not Indian.
Blacks, only
Not one
blacks,
white
only
person
blacks,
says,
bro.
I'm
Only
not
blacks.
white.
Blacks.
No, check it out, don't check it out. Hold right
They
there,
got
hold right there.
Malanasha, boy.
I had a conversation. Hold on. I had a conversation about approximately about 8 years ago with a young lady. And I said, you're an African. And she told me, I'm insulting her. She's a Trinbagonian.
You should have shown her that. You should have shown her that scripture in the Bible about our God's chosen people, marched out of Africa, being made to feel ashamed of their homeland.
She said, you are insulting me. I am a Trinbagonian. That's what she said.
Well, we have faced a lot of that.
What about if you say Afro-Trinbagonian? Is that acceptable?
Well, look, to be totally honest with you, I try to avoid conversations around the identity crisis. Because if we get technical about it, if we get really technical about it, and I'm not getting that technical, we wouldn't even use the word African.
Facts.
Right?
Facts. That do belong to us.
Yeah.
What would you use?
Well, again, that's another question.
What would you use?
Africa was named after a European explorer called Leos Africanus, which
correct.
is only one of 4 theories.
Right.
Yeah.
That is just one of 4 theories on the name Africa. But the continent of Africa was called Alkebulan. But
Right.
even identifying Alkebulan as a continent, we never had the concept of a continent. We didn't see ourselves as being on a continent. So where we were was called Nubia. Another region we were was Kush or Kemet. We never, and all of those lines that you see on the map of Africa, we did not draw them. We did not draw the lines between Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso, the Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia.
Was it a form of segregation?
Well, it's all part of the divide and rule methodology, part of the divide and rule trick. So the whole landmass was actually called Asia. So we were called the Asiatic people, meaning simply the first. And even when you talk about other parts of the world, African people or black people were the original people in every single part of the planet that we know. You know, but again, we don't wish to add fuel to that fiery confusion that already exists. But we understand. And we also understand that language goes through what's called perturbation, where the meanings of words may change or transform over time. And that's fine. That's fine.
David Mohammed, let's talk about your book. Let's talk about that.
Right.
One of many.
Well, 3. One of 3.
Yeah.
So this is Black Studies, the Black Book.
That's your latest.
My latest is not, but my latest, my PhD research, Black Youth at Risk, from Juvenile Delinquency to Criminal Gang Activity. But this book has 10 chapters, right? And it starts off dealing with the 6 ideological strands of Black thought, which are first, Pan-Africanism. Sailor James, Henry Sylvester Williams, George Padmore, all from Trinidad, who triggered off the global Pan-Africanist movement. Second, Black nationalism from Marcus Garvey and Martin Delaney. Marcus Garvey said, Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. And he said, a people without a knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. Then the third strand of Black thought is the Nation of Islam, the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, even Imam Warith Deen Muhammad, and that consciousness that Black people must unite, pool our resources, do for self, and build a Black economy. Then you have the equal rights, civil rights movement of Dr. Martin Luther King, the NAACP, Medgar Evers, and W.E.B. Du Bois. And then fifth, you have the revolutionary consciousness of our own Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, and the Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, Bobby Seale, Mark Clark, and Fred Hampton. And then sixth, the philosophy of His Imperial Majesty Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, and the liberation movement of Africa. And in each of those 6 ideological strands, you have a full range spectrum of ideas and consciousness that come out of them, and that have been followed up by other greats such as Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Tony Martin, John Henrik Clark, George Washington Carver, and all of the new movements that would have come out, Afrocentricity, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and the Black History Movement. So that is basically chapter 1. Then chapter 2 talks about racism. Chapter 3, Caribbean studies. We cover the Haitian Revolution, the Grenada Revolution, the Trinidad 1970 Black Power Revolution, and 62 slave rebellions in 21 Caribbean nations. Then chapter 4 is on slavery, which is probably the longest chapter of Black history. And then pure Black history, but also religion, sociology, psychology, Black economics, and politics. Each chapter, when we were publishing this, each chapter was advised, each chapter could be released as a separate book. Because it's really extensive. But
somewhere in that book, right? I want to ask, anywhere in that book, the Jews were black?
Say again, sorry? Sorry?
The Jews.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You acknowledge that the Jews were black? The original Jews, the Yahudi.
Yeah, well, let me say that once you mention Jews, you're talking about African people.
Yeah.
And
yes.
This, I mean, it goes way back to the beginning of that discussion.
Yeah.
Abraham.
Book, yeah.
Abraham was a black man in Africa. He married Sarah. Sarah couldn't have children. Then he married Hagar. Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, and Ishmael, well, there's a whole misconception of that, but through Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob had 13 children, 12 of which were called the 12 tribes or children of Israel, after Jacob wrestled with the angel. And out of them, the 5th of the 12 tribes, Judah, was the origin of the people of Judah who became known as the Jews. Abraham was an African. Ishmael and Isaac were Africans. Jacob was an African. Judah was an African.
Facts.
And all of those who followed from were all African people.
Yahudi.
And it comes right up to the modern oppression of African people who are Jews in Ethiopia, who were airlifted back to, because they're very mindful of their heritage. So they still see the need to protect some of the original African people. But
nice. No, we want to save this live before it, thing and then cut off. So everybody, if you want to view this live again, you can check it out on RKG the Artist. You could also check it out on my YouTube page, BASSAKA Trilogy. So we'll be posting it, right?
Yeah, no. We have to wrap the live up so funny because actually my battery is very low at this point. But it was definitely a great conversation. Orlando Octave, thanks for joining the live. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time, David Mohammed. We really appreciate it. Because what I want to find out, someone that is seeking knowledge. Let's say somebody who's on the live right now and wants to seek knowledge. They want to seek knowledge on slavery, on Islam, on just something holistically. What is a good book they can go to? What is some source of knowledge they can
Babylon to Timbuktu.
Yeah, well, there are hundreds. Now, what we did in this book as well, Black Studies, we took all the key passages from all of those classical African history books. But what I would guide anyone towards is our website, www.blackagendaproject.com. Also, our social media platforms, that same handle, Black Agenda Project. So youtube.com/Black Agenda Project, Instagram.com/Black Agenda Project. We just launched a TikTok account, which took off pretty well.
Oh, yeah, boy. TikTok, yeah, man, you see?
Yeah,
Yes,
/Black Agenda Project. And the website, blackagendaproject.com. We also have an online radio station that's running on the website.
I would love to have you on one of my lives too.
Yeah, but absolutely. And you know, I could be messaged on the phone number, which is our WhatsApp number for the organization, on 332-0214. All right.
And to purchase the book, the book you
right.
Yeah, what's the cost of the book?
You can arrange to purchase the book by messaging that number 332-0214, or just go to the website blackagendaproject.com.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, the Kwame Torres Center, Prince Galans, just opposite Success Lavendale. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, all are invited to come through, see what's happening, see what we're doing. And to save the date, October 30th, African Expo number.
Yeah, we had to go down. Man. Yeah.
9.
Go check it out, base.
Yeah.
We're gonna pass through.
Thank you very much, David Mohammed, for what you've been doing for us and our people.
Well, David Mohammed.
Blessing.
Yeah, brothers.
Respect.
Yeah, man.
Let me end up with a good note. On the street. Good vibes.
Yeah, man.
Good vibes.
Respect, man.
We end up with a good vibe.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So check out RKG's new video, The Love Life. Yeah, man.
Every time I fall, Father God make me rise again. Them don't know my heart. Them bad mind and them grudgeful and them what
Call for me in the video.
Them don't know my life. Them don't know my fight. Father God bless me. Now I can testify. Let me tell you about life. Life. Every time that
Big up Arima boss. He big up shades, man. He say he like your shades, Arima boss. He's a clown. He's a clown, boy.
People check out the music video. Yeah. RKG Love Life. Go type in RKG on YouTube Love Life. Check out Bass Song too.
The TikTok Mommy. Also, I'm on TikTok. BASSTNT TikTok. Check out the TikTok Mommy Challenge for women over 30, 40, 50, and over who don't look their age. And send your videos, ladies. It's going beautiful. Love it. TikTok Mommy.
Respect. We out. Till next week. Next week, Wednesday. Same time, God's Spare Life. 9 p.m. on the live, RKG and Bass. Check both on radio tomorrow, 12 to 3. With the energy on next 99.1 FM. Respect. We out.